Hi guys, Robbo46 here, welcome yourselves back to MotoGP 20 on the Xbox One X. We're going to be going through the race results for all of the categories from the French Grand Prix that we had at the weekend. I'll be doing 100% race distance, 120% difficulty, on a wet track with a drying line, using Danilo Petrucci. Obviously, there are spoilers ahead, so if you have yet to watch any of the racing from the weekend, I would highly suggest that you click away now before we start getting into it. So that is your warning. But if you have seen it and you want a bit more analysis than that, welcome. Here we go. We're going to start with the very first race, which happened on the Saturday, the first MotoE race. And it was a bit of a shocker because quite a few of the favourites, the title contenders, went down in a big group early on in the race, including the likes of Dominic Agata, Matteo Ferrari, Canepa, Simeon Casadei. So a lot of riders went down, and it was only Dominic Agata who managed to get back on and remount, and he managed to continue the race. But obviously he was a big amount of time behind. And, you know, Agata has been pretty much the favourite for the title all this season. But he hasn't had the best of lucks in the last couple of races. So it wasn't looking good. He did manage to finish in the points, albeit 2 points in 14th place. Which, you know, points are better than nothing, but obviously not where he wanted to finish. Jakob Kornfeld, he finished in 13th place. Alex De Angelis, he finished in 12th. Cardelus was 11th. Tulovic was 10th. And he had Zaccone in 9th. Medina in 8th place. Maria Herrera in 7th. Granado 6th. Marcon in 5th. Josh Hook 4th. Nicky Tully in 3rd. Mike DeMeglio in 2nd. And Jordi Torres took the win in the first race, and put himself right in the championship contention for the final race, which was on the Sunday. So we'll go through race 2 now, even though it's going to be slightly out of order because it was the last race of the day. But we'll go through race 2 now, since as we're talking about MotoE. We had 3 non-finishers this time. It was Medina, Granado and Marcon. They all DNF'd. It was Nicky Tully who took the final race victory of the season, followed by Mike DeMeglio again in 2nd place, and Josh Hook taking a podium in 3rd. Then you had Agata, who had a much better race than the first race at the Le Mans Grand Prix. He finished in 4th place ahead of Ferrari in 5th. Jordi Torres, he finished in 6th ahead of Canepa 7th, Simeon 8th, Herrera 9th, Cardelus 10th, Tulovic 11th, Zaccone in 12th place, Casadei in 13th, De Angelis 14th, and Jakob Kornfeld in 15th place. It was De Angelis' last ever race before he retired from racing motorcycles altogether. Personally, I actually thought that De Angelis retired quite a long time ago, but there we go. So he has officially retired now, has Alex De Angelis. But that 6th position for Jordi Torres gave him the championship. So Jordi Torres, who, you know, he's been fairly consistent all season, but not really one of the favourites for the title, came through, and because of obviously everything that happened in race 1, he took the championship overall. So really good to see Jordi Torres win the championship there. Obviously he hasn't had the best of times recently. He's been in World Superbikes for quite a few seasons. Struggled a little bit there. Obviously was in Moto2 when Moto2 first started up. Got some podiums. I think he got a race win as well. But yeah, it's good to see him back on winning form and winning a championship as well. And that was MotoE completely done. That was their last race of the season, so no more MotoE for 2020. And then we go on to Moto3. I'm not going to do it in the same order as they done on race day, because they done Moto3, MotoGP, and then Moto2, and then the final MotoE race. But we'll start with Moto3. Moto3, as always, first race of the weekend. As always, an absolute amazing race. It was just, quite chaotic, but it was just intriguing to see, because to begin with, it looked like a little group was starting to break away, and it was kind of becoming two groups, and then they kind of all concertinaed back up towards, the middle part of the race, and then a few more people started making a little breakaway as well. Then we had some crashes, which then broke the pack up a little bit. So it was a fantastic race. It was a good race for Albert Arenas, who you may remember John McPhee unfortunately took him out and himself out at the previous round. But Albert Arenas, obviously a point to prove. He wants that championship. He was fighting hard, but he was also getting beaten up quite a lot throughout the race as well. Around Le Mans, it seemed that if one person got the inside of him, pushed him wide, a few other riders were coming through as well. So, you can go into one corner in the lead and then come out of it in about 4th or 5th position. So, it did get a little bit frustrating, but it was, a big old Moto3 fight, as you come to expect. The other Moto3 championship contenders did not have a good day. Ayagura seems to be struggling recently. He struggled at the previous round at Catalonia. And he was outside the points for a lot of the race. And I mean a lot of the race. It wasn't until maybe midway through the race he actually started making some decent progress. And obviously he was aided by quite a few people crashing out as well. So it wasn't a good day for him. And it wasn't a good day for John McPhee, who unfortunately, with 5 laps to go, he was behind Jeremy Alcoba. But, McPhee was struggling pretty much the whole race as well. He was outside the top 10 for most of the race. Did start closing in on the leading group and was on the back of it. But it just didn't seem to quite be working for McPhee at Le Mans. And unfortunately, Jeremy Alcoba crashed in front of him. And it didn't leave McPhee anywhere to go apart from over the motorcycle, the crash bike. And that caused McPhee to crash as well, and then that was it. That's pretty much championship over for McPhee now. He's had quite a few DNFs this season now, which isn't good. But we'll speak a little bit about McPhee a little bit later on, because we don't really know at time of recording where he's going to be going next year. But it was a fantastic race for a couple of Italian riders. And it was Vietti on the Sky Racing VR46 team who managed to continue his good form and come through to win the race. He put on a really calm and calculated race and came through to win overall. Tony Arbolino is, he's a very aggressive rider. You can see the way that he just throws the bike around, throws it into corners. I think a bigger motorcycle is going to suit him a little bit better. A bit like Joan Mir when he was in Moto3. The way that he moved the bike around underneath him made it look like a bigger bike was going to suit him better. So Vietti, he came home to win with Tony Arbolino in a close second place. Albert Arenas managed to keep himself clean and came home in third. Then we had Joan Mir, who was on pole position. He finished in 4th position, followed by Andrea Migno in 5th. Then we had Sasaki in 6th, Raul Fernandez in 7th, Rodrigo in 8th. Ayagura actually came home in 9th place. So despite the fact he was way outside the points for a good margin of the race, he actually came home in 9th place to pick up 7 points, which, he was leading the championship going into Le Mans. He is no longer leading it after Le Mans. But he needs to sort something out, because obviously Catalonia, where he should have tried to capitalise on both McPhee and Albert Arenas being out, he couldn't do that. He only managed to scrape a few points at Catalonia. So 2 races, two not so good results for him. Carlos Tate, he came home in 10th place, and you had Sergio Garcia in 11th, Salach in 12th, Foggia came home in 13th, Riccardo Rossi 14th, and Stefano Neppa was the final point scorer in 15th place. Barry Boltas came home in 16th place, and you had Dubasquire in 17th, Yamanaka 18th, Howie in 19th, Yuki Kuni 20th, Koffler 21st, and Dennis Onchu in 22nd place. Yamanaka did have a long lap penalty. There was a bit of a technical glitch at one point that came up when there was a big group of about 10-11 riders in the leading group. It momentarily came up on the screen saying that Albert Arenas had a long lap penalty, which, you know, if he had to take that, that would have dropped him to the back of the group and a little bit further behind. Luckily, it was a technical glitch. I'm sure his team wasn't happy when they saw it come up on screen, because there wasn't any warning that actually came up on screen to say, you know, track limits warning. But then again, there wasn't one for Yamanaka that came up on our screen anyway. But yeah, that was definitely a technical glitch. They did go on to say that it was a little technical glitch, so Arenas did not have to take a long lap penalty, which was good for him. And yeah, the DNFs, Antonelli, not a good race for him. He managed to crash with 4 laps to go. Obviously McPhee and Alcoba, they came together, or Alcoba crashed and McPhee hit the crash bike with 5 laps to go. Also with 5 laps to go, Toba crashed out. Darren Binder crashed out with 7 laps to go. He was looking good. He was in the leading group, but unfortunately he went out. Actually, I think he had a technical problem. Pizzoli, he went out. Tatsuki Suzuki, he was setting fastest lap after fastest lap, and then 15 laps to go, he ended up on the deck, just pushing a little bit too much in the tricky conditions. But it wasn't actually too bad for the Moto3 condition-wise. It was just cold, which obviously was catching a few of them out. Romano Fenati and Alonso Lopez, they both went down with 16 laps to go. After going into the penultimate corner, Fenati was in front of Lopez. Lopez just completely outbraked himself, went straight into the back of Fenati, and both the pesky Husqvarnas went down on the ground and couldn't remount and continue. So Lopez obviously apologising to Fenati. You don't want to get on Fenati's wrong side because we've seen what happens in the past. But they were fine. They shook and made up. So that was Moto3. Like I said, we don't actually know what is happening with John McPhee next season. You know, originally he was meant to be moving up to Moto2 with the Petronas team, but apparently they're actually happy with their current riders, Vierge, who has re-signed, and Jake Dixon as well. So we're not entirely sure what's going to be happening with McPhee, and obviously Darren Binder is going to be taking McPhee's seat in Moto3. So we don't know what's happening with McPhee at the moment. We'll have to see how that pans out. But the championship for Moto3 now. So Albert Arenas has reclaimed the lead in the championship. He leads Ayogura by 6 points now, so still very close. Ayogura in second. Vietti with that win, he moves up 2 places to third in the championship, only 16 points behind. So Vietti is really coming into it now. Tony Arbolino, he stays in 4th position. He's only 20 points behind. So the top 4 are separated by 20 points, less than a whole race win's worth of points. John McPhee, he drops 2 positions down to 5th. He's now 37 points behind, so it's looking very, very unlikely that McPhee is going to be able to win the championship. But, you know, Moto3, anything can happen. You might have a race where the top 4 in the championship all crash out together or something, and that will put McPhee right back into it. So never say never, but, you know, that is a relatively big gap to try and close in over a whole race wins with points. Messia, he's moved up to 6th position. He's 52 points behind. And we got Rodrigo, he's moved up to 7th. He's 58 points behind. Suzuki, with that DNF, drops 2 positions to 8th, 60 points behind. And Raul Fernandez is 9th, 62 points behind. So that was Moto 3. On to Moto 2, and it all started in free practice with the championship leader Luca Marini having the mother of all high sides, coming down just after the chicane. You have the Dunlop Bridge, and it was through that little left-hand kink. Luca Marini had a massive high side down the hill, and it was just horrible to watch. And yeah, he was understandably beaten up quite a bit, and yeah, injured, but still fit to ride. But it was showing that he was in pain and not able to ride to his full ability. He struggled in qualifying, and he struggled in the race as well, with not actually scoring any points, which was not good to see. But what was good to see was, I mean, Moto2, this happened after the MotoGP race, so it had in fact been raining, but the track was starting to dry out more and more as the race progressed. At one point, we had a Brit first and second in the race. We had Sam Lowes leading for a little bit, with Jake Dixon close behind in second. Sam Lowes had a massive lockup of his front wheel. How the hell he managed to stay on, I have no idea, but that was, you know, a monster of a lockup. A massive puff of smoke from his front tyre, as going down to the garage there as well, which is, you know, not a nice corner at the best of times, let alone without you locking the front wheel up. So Sam managed to stay on. He obviously ended up going wide and pretty much into where the penalty loop is. That allowed Jake Dixon to get through into the lead and lead the race. Jake Dixon led for most of the race, and you know, he was riding really well. He's adapting to the track, which was changing lap by lap. It was drying out a little bit more every lap. Jake had about a 1.2 second lead over Lowes. Sam did start catching Jake up a little bit, but then Jake managed to you know, reassess the situation and start controlling the lead from the front, and managed to get that gap back over to over a second. So yeah, it was looking good, but unfortunately for Jake, with 5 laps to go, he just asked a little bit too much coming out the final corner of the track. Obviously the track wasn't quite as grippy as he thought it was, and unfortunately Jake went down out of the final corner and obviously tried to remount, but sadly wasn't able to. It was yeah, not a good thing to see. Really gutted for Jake, because he's getting there. He's, you know, he's definitely found something within himself, and obviously bike settings and that. And we know that Jake goes well in the wet and tricky conditions anyway. Obviously he made his way through British Superbikes. But yeah, sadly for Jake, it just wasn't meant to be, and he went down. Yeah, 5 laps to go. That meant that Sam Lowes then regained the lead, and he had quite a big lead over Remy Gardner by that point. Remy Gardner was fighting with Bezzecchi and Augusto Fernandez. The gap was just over 5 seconds. Sam, obviously, after seeing what happened to Jake, decided to slow down a little bit, because he obviously didn't want to suffer the same fate, which was very smart from Sam. And yeah, Sam Lowes went on to take his first win of the season, and put himself pretty much back in the title contention. It was a really classy ride from Sam, apart from that massive lockup of the front wheel, like I said. But he managed to recover and take the victory Remy Gardner, he was fighting with Marco Bezzecchi and Augusto Fernandez for pretty much the whole race, but it was Remy Gardner who managed to snatch second place off of Bezzecchi to take that second position. Marco Bezzecchi came home in third place to take that final podium position. Augusto Fernandez, Sam Lowes' teammate, came home in fourth. Thomas Luthi was fifth. Joe Roberts. We need to talk about Joe Roberts because there was issues on the grid. He was obviously meant to start from pole position. There was issues on the grid, issues with his tyres, and unfortunately his bike had to be wheeled off the grid back into the pit lane, where they then changed the tyres over, and then Roberts set off. He tried obviously catching the pack, so they were already on their warm-up lap. He wasn't able to catch him, and literally as he was coming through the penultimate corner and coming through the final corner, the lights went out and the race had started, so Joe Roberts didn't even get to start from the grid. He would have probably had to start from the back of the grid, and he wasn't allowed to overtake the safety car for a couple of corners. Eventually he did get through, and I tell you what, hats off to him. He rode one hell of a race to start, obviously not even on the grid really, start in the final corner, and he managed to finish well inside the top 10 in 6th position. So if Roberts had been able to start on the grid in pole position, I think he may have been definitely the favourite to win that race, because he was just getting past people with ease pretty much and really adapted to the situation and the conditions. So yeah, very well done to Joe Roberts for doing that. Digi Antonio came home in 7th position, just in front of Lorenzo Baldassari in 8th. Chandra came home in 9th with Schrotter in 10th. Bastianini, another title contender, came home in 11th place, ahead of Hector Garzo in 12th, Marcos Ramirez in 13th. Manzi came home in 14th, ahead of the last point scorer, Hafiz Sayarin, in 15th place. Then we had Simone Corsi in 16th. Luca Marini, like I said, battered and bruised. He came home in 17th place, so out of the points. Lorenzo Dalla Porta came home in 18th. Edgar Pons in 19th. Boben Snyder 20th. Nagashima 21st. Bisekursky in 22nd. And Kazma Daniel in 23rd. And like I said, the non-finishers were unfortunately Jake Dixon after crashing out of the lead. Jorge Navarro went down as well on the speed up. Nicolo Bulliger, he retired. Izdaihar DNF'd. Vieje had a high side. And Jorge Martin didn't have the best of races either. He unfortunately crashed out as well and DNF. So yeah, it all went on in Moto2, and it was a good Moto2 race. It's it was an exciting race to watch, to see what was actually going to pan out. But yeah, felt so gutted for Jake Dixon. He was doing everything right, and then it was just the final corner just caught him out, and down he went. The punishment definitely didn't fit the crime, but hopefully next time he can come back and get towards the front again. So the championship for Moto2, with Luca Marini not scoring any points, Bastianini not really scoring that many points. I mean, Bezzecchi obviously getting 3rd position, but beating all of them was Sam Lowes, who took the win. So Luca Marini on 150 points still leads the championship by 15 points from Bastianini in 2nd place. 20 points behind is Bezzecchi, and only 22 points behind now is Sam Lowes. And let's not forget, Sam Lowes didn't even race at Qatar because he was injured, so Sam is missing 1 round's worth of points. Not saying obviously he would have won that race, but he would have definitely picked up some points. And obviously he had that pit lane start at the 2nd Red Bull Ring race. So Sam is coming back into it. He's been pretty consistent recently. He's finally got that first win of the season, So we'll have to wait and see how he gets on throughout the rest of the season. So the top 4, and it is pretty much just between the top 4 now. Top 4 of the championship, all separated by 22 points. So all 4 of them are under a whole race win's worth of points behind each other, which is, is going to be a good last few rounds. And yeah, looking forward to seeing how that pans out. Jorge Martin, obviously not been a good few rounds. Obviously he missed a couple of rounds because he got that virus. And yeah, he's still in 5th position, but he is now 71 points behind Luca Marini. Nagashima, his teammate, is in 6th. He's 78 points behind. Thomas Luthi has now moved up 2 positions to 7th, but he's 82 points behind. Joe Roberts has now moved up to 8th, 84 points behind. And Remy Gardner has moved up to 9th, 89 points behind. So literally it's between the top 4 in the championship at the moment. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that one pans out. And now the final race we're going to be talking about today was in fact the second race of the day, MotoGP. And in typical MotoGP fashion, it started raining when they were on the grid, which is just typical. It always seems to happen for MotoGP. Even at like places like Silverstone, which is very hit and miss with the weather, you can be pretty much guaranteed it will be dry for all the other races, but as soon as MotoGP get to the grid, it's going to start raining. And it started raining hard, so it was originally declared a dry race, then it was delayed, so the riders could then go back into the garage and change bikes or tyres and setups and that. And then it was declared a wet race, and it kind of just about stopped raining just a little bit into the race, but Le Mans doesn't dry very quickly, so it was never going to be really a flag to flag. There was no sun coming through the clouds. It wasn't overly windy to be able to help dry it out. So yeah, although it was declared a wet race and a flag to flag, they didn't have to change bikes. They just kept on it. And yeah, it was again another crazy race. It was basically who could read the conditions the best, and who could get the grip from the rear tyre and continue going forward. Valentino Rossi, unfortunately, his race was over before it pretty much began. He managed to get through turn 2, but as he went into the chicane we're going into now, he opened the throttle and the rear just came round and down he went. 3rd crash and 3rd DNF in a row for Rossi. So that's 3 races in a row he's not finished. He's crashed out. Very, very lucky not to get his foot run over by Joan Mir, who had to take avoiding action, but yeah, Rossi's foot was so close to getting run over, but luckily didn't. And yeah, obviously Joan Mir, who has been very, very consistent throughout the last few rounds, he had to take avoiding action, so lost quite a bit of time from that, and pretty much struggled for the race. Maverick Vinales, who started quite far up on the grid, he ended up way down outside the points as well. He done his usual thing of going backwards, but the thing is with Maverick, he didn't really get going in the race either. He struggled with the wet conditions, and yeah, just couldn't make the most of it. Fabio Quartararo done his best to try and hold on as much as he could. It was 3 Ducatis who got into the top 3 pretty much straight away. You had Petrucci, you had Dovizioso, and you also had Jack Miller in the top 3 spots. Quartararo was in 4th, but Quartararo did start dropping quite a lot as riders started, getting to grips with the conditions, moving forward, and started to set personal best laps. And there was riders who had literally nothing to lose. Obviously Quartararo's got a championship to think about, so obviously a little bit tentative than normal. And the riders that didn't have anything to lose, it definitely showed as they started making passes on Quartararo and coming through and pushing Quartararo down the order. Bradley Smith, who was looking good, he actually was the quickest rider in FP1. He was doing well. It was similar conditions to FP1, and he was making good progress. He was well inside the top 10, but unfortunately he ended up crashing out of the race with 18 laps to go. Tito Rabat as well, he crashed out with 12 laps to go. Obviously, I already mentioned Rossi crashing out on the first lap. Cal Crutchlow, he was looking good as well. He kind of almost back to his normal form. Qualified really well and was pretty high up in the race, but unfortunately, with 9 laps to go, Crutchlow ended up crashing out. As did Franco Morbidelli. He crashed out with 8 laps to go. Obviously, Morbidelli taking that fantastic win at Mazzano. Jack Miller, unfortunately, forced to retire. He was battling in the top group. Alex Rins actually caught the guys, caught the Ducatis. Alex Rins was setting fastest lap after fastest lap, and he caught the Ducatis. He was fighting with Miller for quite a lot of the race, trying to get through. He could make a pass on Miller, but then Miller seemed to have slightly, better drive out the corners and was able to out-accelerate the Suzuki and get back into third. Now, where we're going to be coming up to soon is the BFSs, and there was almost a monumental accident into the BFSs, including all the top 4 riders in the race. Alex Rins was slipstreaming Jack Miller, and going into the S's, you had Petrucci and Dovi fighting as well. Going into the S's though, Rins he kind of outbraked himself a little bit. Obviously, he had slipstream as well, which didn't help. Miller outbraked himself, had to basically cut across the S's, put his hand up to let people back through. But somehow, Alex Rins managed to get his bike stopped literally on the inside curb of the left-hander of the S's, basically up the inside of Dovizioso, and managed to get into second position. I don't know how the hell he managed to get the bike stopped. I don't know how the hell all the riders managed to avoid contact, because it was looking like it was going to end very, very badly. But luckily, obviously, they're all very high professionals, gave each other enough room. No one went down. They all continued. But yeah, that was kind of like you didn't really want to watch to see what the outcome of that was going to be. But luckily, it was fine. A few laps later, unfortunately, Jack Miller, his bike went kaput and he had to retire from the race. Obviously, not happy at all was Miller. He was looking strong in those conditions, looking good, and he had to retire. When he got back to the pit box, he was throwing his gloves around and obviously very, very unhappy, which is very understandable. Really unfortunate for Miller. And yeah, he unfortunately DNF'd. A bit later on, Alex Rins ended up crashing, although he did remount, but he got shown what they call the meatball flag, which is the orange circle on the black flag, to show that he had a mechanical problem, because one of the Marshall straps that they use to basically put through like the front wheel to help drag it out the gravel was, I don't know how it happened. Obviously, a Marshall put it round the rear of Rins's bike, basically over the rear mounted camera, and it was dangling down as Rins was racing. It obviously remounted and started going again. It was not looking good. It was looking a bit dodgy, because if that had got properly tangled up in the rear wheel, that could have been a massive crash for Rins. It did get tangled up a little bit, but not in. It almost looked like it got tangled around the sprocket more than anything, but didn't lock the rear wheel up, thankfully. Rins did manage to dislodge it and started getting going again, but for a moment there it did look like, that is possibly going to end in a very, very bad way, because they are very strong straps as well, and yeah, that wouldn't have been good if it did lodge itself into the rear wheel and get tangled up in there, but luckily it didn't. and Rins was able to get it off his bike and continue the race. But he did, unfortunately for him, finish outside the points. So we've gone through the DNFs. We've gone through what happened between the Ducatis and Alex Rins. It was Danilo Petrucci, the rider we're using now, who ended up taking the race win. He obviously was behind his teammate Dovizioso for a little bit, managed to get in front of him. Dovi tried fighting back a little bit. We obviously had that incident at the BFS's as well with Rins, and that put Dovi back quite a bit. Dovizioso, as he said, ended up using up too much tyre and started dropping back, which gave Danilo Petrucci a decent enough lead, and he just managed to come home and take the victory. We've obviously seen Danilo Petrucci take a victory before last season at Mugello, but it's not been the best of ends to 2019, and definitely not the beginning of 2020 either. He's been very, very quiet, hasn't really got, decent results, but he came out in the tricky conditions and managed to take the win. Now, we know that Petrucci goes well in the wet anyway. Obviously, Silverstone 2015, he done very, very well, coming home in second place just behind Valentino Rossi at Silverstone. But yeah, Petrucci just rode really, really well, didn't really get out of shape or anything, looked very much in control, and was a very, very good win for him. So very, very well done to Danilo Petrucci, who did come home to take victory. A rookie came home in second position, Alex Marquez. Repsol Honda's first podium of the season came courtesy of Alex Marquez, the rookie. And I tell you what, watching him in the tricky conditions, he did not look like a rookie. He wasn't, all over the place. He looked smooth. He looked really in control. And I tell you what, if there was a few more laps, I think he might have even been able to catch Petrucci and take the victory. But he ran out of laps, but was looking very, very good. He was taking his time, just picking people off. He wasn't rushing things. And yeah, he got in front of Cal Crutchlow before Crutchlow crashed out to become the top Honda of the race. And yeah, just showed that he was, calm-headed. And like I said, didn't look like a rookie at all, because sometimes with rookies in wet races, you see him just, rushing into corners and, a lot of the time ended up like losing the front or something. But no, looked very, very good. And yeah, he managed to come home in a very well-deserved second position. Pol Espargaro, he came home in a third position. A great race for Pol. He, on the KTM, he's able to get better grip at the rear tyre and use the KTM's power to get past the Yamahas and stuff like that. He may have been able to catch Alex Marquez if there had been another couple of laps. So maybe, another few laps if Marquez had been able to catch Petrucci. I think maybe Pol Espargaro may have indeed taken the win overall, because he was catching Alex Marquez, but just not enough to take home second position. Andrea Dovizioso came home in fourth. Johan Zarco came home in fifth position. He was actually quite quiet throughout the whole race. It didn't really look like he was making that much progress until, towards the end of the race, he started overtaking more people and managed to progress to fifth. Miguel Oliveira came home in sixth position. He was fighting in the top group, for a little bit and trying to go with the likes of Alex Marquez and Pol Espargaro, but didn't quite manage to do it. He came home in the sixth position. Nakagami, a good seventh place for him. Stefan Bradl, the other Repsol Honda, came home inside the top 10 in 8th position. So effectively the test rider for HRC coming home in 8th. Quartararo, like I said, he was obviously more concerned about the championship, didn't want to crash or anything like that. He wanted to stay upright. He was a top Yamaha, and he came home in 9th position. Maverick Vinales did eventually come home in 10th, but like I said, was outside the points for a little while until people started crashing and that, and didn't do his usual thing of becoming the fastest rider on track towards the end of the race. He just 10th position, so not great. Same with Mir as well, never really recovered after taking avoidant action of Rossi on lap 1. Just didn't really look like he was going to be able to do what he usually does towards the end of the race as well, which is just get quicker and quicker. Apparently Suzuki have been struggling at Le Mans with the colder conditions and getting that heat into the rear tyre, so obviously that would have played a part. Brad Binder, he came home in 12th position. Bagnaia was pretty quiet all weekend as well. He ended up finishing in 13th place, so not really where we expect to see him, but yeah, still inside the points, 13th place. He was ahead of Alicia Spargo, who came home in 14th place. It was kind of looking like Alicia may have been able to finish inside the top 10, but he started dropping back a little bit as well. Ika Lecuona took the final point in 15th place. And then Alex Rins, like I said, he did remount after his crash. But yeah, finished outside the points. So yeah, that was Le Mans. Like I said, it was a pretty hectic race. Pretty chaotic, and you know, the amount of crashes we had as well was fairly high. Yeah, I felt so gutted for Jack Miller. He was looking good and possibly going to be able to get on the podium, but his bike said no, and unfortunately it expired. But yeah, well done to Danilo Petrucci. You know, this season has not been going very well for him at all, really. And yeah, to come out and get a win in tricky conditions was very, very good. So that was Le Mans. There are 5 races to go. 2 at Aragon, 2 at Valencia, and the final race, which will be at Portimao. So what has that done to the championship? Despite all that, Quartararo still holds on to the championship lead, and he's actually extended it a little bit over Joan Mir, who's still in 2nd place. So Fabio Quartararo is on 115 points. Joan Mir is on 105, so 10 points behind is Mir. Andrea Dovizioso's moved back up 1 position in the championship to 3rd. He is now 18 points behind Quartararo. And then Maverick Vinales has dropped 1 position down to 4th, but he's still only 19 points behind Quartararo. And then Nakagami, who's actually moved up 2 positions to 5th, he's 34 behind. Then we've got Morbidelli in 6th, he's 38 points behind. Jack Miller in 7th, he's 40 behind. Paulo Spargo in 8th, he's 42 behind. And Miguel Oliveira in 9th is 69 points behind. So the championship is far from over. 5 races to go, 125 points on the table. And Marc Marquez is potentially going to be coming back at the next race just to throw a spanner in the works. So who knows what's going to happen for the remainder of the season. But all we know is that the top 4 are all separated by 19 points. So, you know, it's still anyone's game. It's, you know, Aragon is a very technical track. You know, it's got that really long back straight on it, so you can expect the likes of the Hondas and the Ducatis to go well there. Mark being back as well, you know, you expect him to be up there as well. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens at the next few races. But, yeah, that is it from me, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already for more two-wheel content, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to stay safe and to wash your hands. See you!